you so much for coming tonight. This debate is one of a series of three related to secularism and the role of religion in Australian society, a hot topic and one that you're all interested in, no doubt. I do some broadcasting for Sky News, 2UE, and some writing for The Punch, The Daily Telegraph and The Sunday Telegraph, and every time I touch on religion, it is possibly, I get the most incredible responses. The Punch website was almost set into meltdown after something I wrote about scriptures in school. So even though we are ostensibly a secular country, this is a debate which speaks to the heart of all of us. The topic tonight is, should religions in Australia pay their fair share of tax? And a terrific topic it is, brought up by Frank there. Very good topic. For the affirmative, we have Max Wallace, author of The Purple Economy. Round of applause, please. Sid Hickman, National President of the Secular Party. And speaking against the proposition are Peter Madden from the Christian Democratic Party. And Charles Northcote, who's involved in the religious not-for-profit sector. There's some passion there already on both sides. All right, these are the rules. Each speaker will be allowed 10 minutes. There'll be a ding-ding in about 8 minutes. Then one speaker from each side will be chosen to do rebuttal. That'll go for about 5 minutes. That should leave us plenty of time for a Q&A at the end. The only other rules, no scratching, no biting, no spitting, just the usual rock and roll wrestling rules. Please welcome as the first speaker, Max Wallace.
Good evening. When we pose the question of whether religious organisations should pay tax, we should be clear about which organisations we mean. Charity law states that to advance religion itself is a standalone form of charity. There are three other categories of charity. These are the relief of poverty, the advancement of education, and a catch-all miscellaneous category, other purposes beneficial to the community. I don't have a problem with organisations like Anglicare, Centrecare, the Salvos, and so on, having tax-exempt status. I have no doubt that their employees, from time to time, see the work they do as a way to proselytise for their faith, or more seriously, seek deathbed bequests from the people they assist. I think that is inappropriate. I think it shouldn't happen. But overall, the merit of the work they probably do, they do, outweighs that kind of behaviour. Where I think those organisations are obviously acceptable as charities is under the category as organisations that relieve poverty or are beneficial to the community. But I believe there should be a Charities Commission in Australia, as there is in New Zealand, and as recommended by the Charities Definitions Inquiry in 2001. That commission should put on the public record all the income and expenditure of charity organisations. They would have to register and submit annual returns. That is what happens in New Zealand, albeit imperfectly. If we had that, we would have more public accountability than we have now. It would help clear the air on these charities' activities. Another qualification I make is that I believe no atheist, humanist, rationalist, or related organisation should be able to apply for tax-exempt status as some of them now do. I believe the government, either at a federal, state, or local council level, should in no way fund any kind of belief itself, be it religious or otherwise. The history of how religious and other organisations became eligible for tax-exempt status is important. Far back in time, monarchy and church were never expected to pay tax. As democracy developed, the British government formalised the advancement of religion as a form of charity in the 17th century. The idea was not controversial because at that time, religious belief in the population was just expected. The definition of religion as charity refers to the Christian idea that religious belief is a form of supernatural charity, a notion confirmed by Pope Benedict as recently as January 2006. The idea is that religious orders and institutions help dispense supernatural charity to those yet to be converted to the one true belief. In an historical sense, one could understand the reasoning behind the definition of religion as charity in the 16th and 17th centuries. It wasn't necessarily a conspiracy, even though the tax exemption for monarch and church can be understood to be the basic structure of all politics. It was largely the culture of the times. Later in the 19th century, as religious belief began its long decline in the West, thanks partly to the impact of Charles Darwin's science and the beginnings of secular education, the courts decided that alternative forms of belief, unrelated to religion, such as humanism, could also qualify for tax-exempt status on the grounds of advancement of education or other purposes beneficial to the community. The point is, these historical reasons should no longer apply. It is no business of the state to advance non-belief in any form. If it does that, it is promoting atheism. It is not the state's business to advance religion in the 21st century. If it does that, it is promoting theocracy. Another reason why churches and non-religious organisations should pay tax can be inferred from Professor Boccabella's article in the Sydney Morning Herald on 11 March. He pointed out that Australia faces a fiscal crisis if nothing is done about the no-go tax zones protected by politicians for fear of electoral consequences. Without evaluating them, these include no death duties, no capital gains tax on the family home, 50% discount on other capital gains, capped tax on superannuation, negative gearing on investments, no GST on food, GST capped at 10%. One only has to look at the extreme budget deficits of various states in America, especially California, to see the consequences of the flight from taxation. Tax-free religion is one of these no-go zones. But Australia pays a heavy price for the advancement of religion. Even discounting the value of the charitable work of their linked organisations, which is largely subsidised by government, the cost would run into some billions of dollars. It's hard to know how much. The Tax Office recently conceded during a Senate inquiry into Senator Xenophon's bill to introduce the idea of public benefit into charity law, that many religions are simply invisible to them. But this is the same Tax Office which determined in 2001 that a retired pastor was entitled to free church-provided accommodation, the use of a car, and $1,000 per week paid into a church credit card to pay for the goods and services he required. All these are fringe benefits. Religious fringe benefits have been calculated to cost $90 million in the 2009 financial year. There is also disconnection within churches. The Anglican Diocese of Sydney lost $100 million in the global financial crisis in the face of budgetary requirements for their parishes. Why should taxpayers subsidise that? I conclude with the thoughts of the Reverend Neil Reid when he was head of the Uniting Church in New South Wales. At the church's annual meeting in 2008, he pointed out that the church's assets were worth $3.9 billion. Its land was also worth about that sum. This is in New South Wales alone. But the church is facing looming extinction through declining membership. Reverend Reid said the church should start selling underutilised churches, manses and halls and give the proceeds to the poor and disadvantaged. His idea was that if churches got outside their comfort zone and into more active proselytising, they may find their true purpose. It is not a large step to extend that thought to the tax-exempt status of churches. If they were not feather-bedded by taxpayers, they may find some new motivation. But I'm not holding my breath. Thank you.
Max Wallace there with some powerful and compelling arguments. To speak against that proposition, I now call up Peter Madden from the Christian Democratic.
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me in this debate. Ladies and gentlemen, our subject tonight is, should religions pay their fair share of tax? To adequately debate this subject, we must define two things. The word religions, and secondly, what is a fair share of tax? I'd like to deal with the word religions. The Oxford Dictionary defines religion as the belief in a superhuman controlling power, especially in a personal God or gods entitled to obedience and worship. The expression of this in worship, a particular system of faith and worship, life under monastic vows, and the fifth definition, a thing that one is devoted to. Dictionary.com adds, something one believes in and follows devotedly, a point or matter of ethics or conscience. However, the modern anthropological view is more akin to the last two definitions. We need to explore these definitions of religion, as I believe they are essential to this